Here at Charlie Crimebuster, we welcome comments, suggestions, opinions, and whether you agree or disagree with our view on a topic, we still want to hear from you. Reach out with a shout-out. Email Charlie at charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Or you can call or text us at 407-917-2211. That's 407-917-2211. And we'd like to thank our sponsor, PeacemakerNetwork.com, and also thank those of you who already support our podcast. Did you know that your donations not only help with this podcast, but also support the brave men and women, first responders, law enforcement, correction officers, security personnel, and our military? You too can donate, as well as become a monthly badge member. That's BADGE member by simply subscribing to PeacemakerNetwork.com. That's PeacemakerNetwork.com. And if you're a true crime junkie, we would like to encourage you to binge-cast by listening to our podcasts located on many of the popular podcast platforms. Simply search for Charlie Crimebuster, or you can ask your smart speaker to play Charlie Crimebuster. But since you're streaming us here on YouTube tonight, simply click on the subscribe button and you'll be notified each time we drop a new episode. So please do us that huge favor and press that subscribe button right now. And we thank you.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals participating and do not represent those of city, county, state, or federal law enforcement agencies, nor sponsors and platforms of this presentation. The Charlie Crimebuster name and all forms and abbreviations are property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent unless or until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains adult subject matter. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
The Karen Reed murder trial. We're going to be talking about the aftermath. What are the key people saying about the trial and the not guilty verdict on all the most serious charges? Join James Buckland and I as we discuss those events this week on Charlie Crimebuster's Crime Talk. James, it's been a really, really exciting week hearing from all of those that were a part of the trial.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was listening to many of the what the jurors were saying coming out. One lady is she would really like for them to find who did it. She has some suspicions, and it seemed like everybody in the jury room, even though he was not on trial, thought Higgy Bear,
Higgy Bear,
Hitman Higgins.
Hitman Higgins, that's what you call him, right?
Yeah. That he's the culprit because his stories never lined up with McAlbert's and some of the others. So I think there's and I think it's probably true that he probably never entered the house. I think Higgins got him on the front porch and hurt him.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, I really do believe that's actually what happened.
Ah, wow. All right, man. We're talking about the aftermath. A lot of exciting things happen. James, probably some of the people are wondering why we're still doing an episode on this case. I mean, we've spent like 8-10 weeks on it, right?
Well, tell us why you did another episode in this case, and since the verdict has now arrived.
Well, the reason why, because this is a trial like probably none other than that a lot of people have ever experienced. I mean, it's like this trial has legs on it, and it just keeps on going and keeps on going even after the verdict ends. But the main reason is, all during the trial, what some people may or may not realize was that there was a gag order on the attorneys.
Oh, that's right.
In other words, they couldn't talk. They couldn't say how they felt about it. They couldn't get out. Now Karen Reed could. She could talk to the press, but the attorneys could not talk at all. They could not express themselves. And then the other people, all of those people that were in the house that night that we heard from on the first trial, we didn't hear anything much from them at all. The only person really called to the witness stand in the second trial was, of course, Jen, McCabe.
Right.
But so everybody was just quiet. And so, I just thought maybe this thing would be quiet and go on. But boy, once the trial was over, the gag order was lifted, and everybody seemed to have a statement to try to share about the trial. And so the trial just keeps on going on because it has legs. Now people reacting to the verdict, right?
Right.
Like we were talking, earlier that, a juror says, "Hey, I believe this is what happened," or I want to see justice for O'Keefe. I want to see him find somebody that's guilty.
Right.
And so there's still a lot of legs on this trial. And don't forget, also we have a civil trial coming up.
That's right.
She's going to be tried civilly. At least that's what it looks like at this point.
Yeah, they're going to try her civilly, and also the two they're going to the families, the O'Keefe family is going to sue the two bars, I guess, were involved as well.
Yep, right, yep.
Yeah. Well, tell us about the Massachusetts State Police statement.
Well, that kind of intrigued me too because it came so quick. I mean, just I think on Thursday they made a statement. It was the Colonel Jeffrey Noble. He was responding in behalf of the Massachusetts state, and it was really I thought it was pretty cool to see that he was basically saying we have to learn from this. He said we've been really challenged with this, and talked about the fact that they were going to spend a lot more time training the officers. Of course, they did. Of course, share their condolences to John O'Keefe and his family. But basically, he said they were going to be working on advanced investigative training
Hmm. Hmm.
to ensure proper appropriate oversight, and he said, "quote enhance accountability." But the thing that's so crazy about this, James, is that uh, the kind of mistakes that were made in this trial did not take advanced investigative training. I mean, it
Yeah,
was just plain old 101 training. I
that's
mean,
right. That's right.
I wasn't with the state police department, but I was with a county police department,
Uh-huh.
and we had enough training to know that the way that this entire crime was investigated it was shoddy. It was ridiculous.
Right.
Just unworld. And the thing about it is, I think that one of the reasons it really began that way is that the police department got very quickly they got tunnel vision. The
Yeah.
first thing everybody thought is that he was hit by a car. He was hit
Right.
by a car, and that I think they pretty well made up their mind at that point. That's why they didn't preserve the crime scene. They did not take pictures that morning. They did not go into that house, investigate people in the house. They did not separate the witnesses, the whole 9 yards. And I think it's great that he is saying, we're going to have advanced investigative training, and we're going to talk about. And I love what he said when he talks about having oversight because every case should have a manager that's watching to make sure that all those things are carried out correctly. And I think it's great that there's accountability. I guess what I have the problem with is that these guys had been trained to do the right thing.
Right.
They,
Right.
they, they went through the state police training. The state police never told the trooper if you're investigating a scene, go out and get red Solo cups.
Right.
The state police in the training of state police officers never told them, to get a snow leaf blower, blow away evidence. That
Right.
the state police had more training than that. So I'm glad they're going to do some advanced training, but I think it's probably more like remember I think it was the old football story of the coach, who one of the famous coaches, and he said got his pro team around. And he said, "All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get back to the basics. This is a football,
Right. Right.
This is where you start. So I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of blown away with the advanced investigative training.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think they just need Puro investigative training, or
Right.
get back to what you know in the first place. But I do think that it's great that they're going to try to learn from this, and that seems to be what the state police are saying. And I think we've got to say that Michael Proctor, of course, was a disgrace, but I sure don't want to say that all of the Massachusetts State Police officers are that way.
Right.
I'm sure there's a whole lot of brave men and women out there, and men and women who have integrity and honesty. And I think it's very, very important that we don't paint the whole Massachusetts State Police Department as being those type of investigators. I just don't believe they are for the
Right.
whole.
Right. Well, Charlie, the Massachusetts police made statements, but yet some people are confused about that. Can you kind of provide some clarity there?
Yeah, I can, and it's very easy to get confused because also the Massachusetts State Police Association made a statement, and what some people probably think, well, that's the same thing as the police department making the statement. It's not. The Massachusetts State Association Police Association. It's like today. A lot of people probably have heard of what is called the FOP, which is the Fraternal Order of Police,
Right.
and they've also heard of the the other organizations and unions that are out there, the PBA, the Police Benevolence Association.
Right.
All these are unions that get together to show support to officers. They stand up for them when it comes to trying to get them paid better. They stand up to make sure that they have safe working conditions as much as possible in police work, and they also stand up against the officers when they are falsely accused, and they provide them legal
Uh-huh.
representation, this sort of thing.
Right.
So this was basically an organization that was basically there to support the police department and the police officers. And they came out. They called it all BS. They said we think that our guys did a great job. We think that she's guilty. So you have the Massachusetts State Police saying, "Hey, we got to learn from this," but you have the association saying, "Well, we don't care what the jury said. We believe we got it right." So you
Right.
have two
Exactly.
different people, two people there. So it's not double speak out there. It's two different organizations that's responding.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, Charlie, we know that Inspector Proctor has made some statements. Do you think he should be rehired?
The Proctor factor, we called
The
it. Isn't that what
Proctor
we called it?
factor. Yeah.
The Proctor factor.
Yep.
No, I don't. I think he's all. I think that bus has already left the station, and I think the ship's already left the harbor. I would be shocked if any organization, any department would hire him because it was such a high public embarrassment. I
Yeah.
mean, think of the things that he did. He called her a whack job. Called her retarded. He had vulgar remarks about her appearance and talked about her chronic medical condition.
Uh-huh.
And this is the lead investigator. The lead investigator of the case, and he sends this text out. Was trying to find nudes on her phone. Everything was totally unprofessional. It was inappropriate, and it was an embarrassment. And no, I mean, he makes a statement. Prior to that time, he said, I've had really good evaluations. They were always good, outstanding, and perfect. But let me tell you something that says a whole lot about that. If you remember when his supervisor was on the stand
Yep.
and Alan Jackson was talking to him and said, "Okay, now you say that you don't agree. You know what he's done, or do you still think he is a great police officer?" And he said, "Oh yes, I do." And
Hmm.
so I mean that took the credibility away from that supervisor right then because
Yeah.
anybody that would stand up or say that it's okay for what Proctor did, there's something wrong with him. This guy blew it. It's sad that there are those things in our life with certain mistakes we make that we really don't really get over. I mean,
That's
it
true.
follows us all our life, and this is going to follow him all of his life. Now, I don't know if there's some kind of a union agreement that it has to be more egregious than this in order to fire an officer. Then maybe the union comes back and fights for his job and he gets it back. But I sincerely doubt it.
Yeah, it's gonna be sketchy if they do hire him back. Because in
Well,
any
yeah,
case that he tries is gonna
yeah,
be,
exactly. That's the point right there.
yeah.
Anytime he's involved in anything, he goes to court. They're going to bring this all up again,
Hmm.
going to attack his credibility, and his credibility is not going to be worth anything when it comes to trying other cases.
Right. Right.
I mean, even right now, they're looking at some of the past cases that he's
Exactly.
had.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
no, no. He said he wants his job. Said he loves his job, and I agree. You know that the one thing doesn't define a person, but this one thing is so big, so huge, and became so public that it. Now I do think that I think that there was some understanding there when you talk about it. He said, and this I think is worth saying. He said, what's on your phone? I'm sure that a lot of people out there have embarrassing things on their phones, and there are things that are private. And he said that he thought that he had, a right to privacy. That was his device, his phone. The only problem is that privacy only goes so far when you're in an arena like he's in.
Right, right.
Now, let me ask you a question. Do you think that fact that this happened with him and his phone, do you think that would have been motivating for both Albert and the hitman to get rid of their phone?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think they were all three were involved in some type of conversation. I think that Higgins and McAlbert both um, were also contributors to what
They probably
happened.
they probably had a lot of embarrassing things on their phone, don't you think?
I'm certain they
Yeah,
did. Yep, I'm certain they did.
and as because they had the background in law enforcement that we who have been in that area do, we do realize that all it takes is one subpoena.
Yep,
And then, buddy, everything you have privately on your phone is suddenly going to be public knowledge,
yep.
which is exactly what happened with Proctor.
That's
That
exactly right.
wasn't his work phone that he did that stuff on. It was his personal phone.
Correct.
And
Correct.
what do you and I say about that digital footprint, right?
Everywhere you go,
This,
everywhere you go.
hey, this could be a lesson to a lot of people out there.
That's right.
You
Be
think you
very,
think you think that's private. You think that's you. It's always going to be private, but something could come up, and happen, and all of a sudden it's not so private.
also too, speaking of conversations that are private, Officer Deaver, when she was on the stand, she claimed that she had this thing called false memory.
Yeah, false memory.
It's
Yeah,
a
can you believe
phenomenon where someone recalls something that did not actually
yeah,
happen.
yeah, a phenomenon. Yeah, yeah. Hey, we used to call that lying,
That's right.
but I guess now it's a false
It's
memory.
a false
If
memory.
you
But
ever, hey, your wife ever catch you in a lie today, folks, and
it's
say, "Oh no, honey, I didn't lie.
it's
It was
just a
just a
false
false memory."
memory.
I love it. I love it.
Uh,
Yeah, I do love it. But it is it can become public,
oh
and
yeah.
people need to recognize that. It just uh this idea of you just got to be careful when you're online. And I'm not justifying what these guys did or anything like that, but I'm telling people that you need to realize that and here's a question I wanted to ask you. I mean, you're our IT guy. You're the guy that's got the knowledge there. Um, it was there any way at all that even though they destroyed their phone, that they could go back with a company and pick up texts and stuff like that?
Not if it's a burner. If it's a burner phone.
What if it's not a burner?
If it's a personal account, the carrier will have to be responsible for any text messages, and they can subpoena the carrier.
If they destroy the SIM card and the phone, they could still pull those out. And if so, wonder why that didn't happen.
They probably ask for it to be purged. I mean, think about it. Higgins went all the way to a military base to have his SIM card purged.
Yeah,
What does that tell you?
yeah.
It doesn't, it raises the question, did he have his SIM card and McAlbert's SIM card?
Well,
Just
don't
saying.
know.
I'm
Yeah,
just putting it out there.
yeah, yeah. The problem with all this suspicious behavior is that even if there wasn't anything tied to the case, that suspicious behavior lends the it opens up the whole keg of worms that you can just about go anywhere and think about why they did this or why they did that or why they did this.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, we had a funny moment there. We'll break into our next segment. You want to tell us about the crazy crook of the week?
Oh, a crazy crook of the week, huh? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. This was a guy that he was caught speeding on the freeway
Yep.
in a semi truck. He was
Yep.
from Canada, but it didn't happen in Canada. It happened here. He was pulled over. He was doing 70 in a 55 mile per hour truck, but you know, I think everybody, lots of people, get very nervous if you're pulled over by the police. And when I
Yep.
pull people over, they always seem to be a little nervous. But this guy was just, he was extra nervous to the point that he was shaking, and so that behavior kind of sends a little message, and so they called the drug dog up, and he came up and he hit on it, and he hit on heroin, and he hit on the meth, and he hit on cocaine, and they found over 200 pounds of cocaine and
Oh,
meth on that truck. Now you would think, wouldn't you, if you were going around with a semi truck and you had 200 pounds of illegal drugs, I don't think that would be the time to be speeding.
and yeah,
You know,
well, we
to
we
to
we
to, to go go 15 mile per hour over the speed zone.
well,
I mean that's
we always say that crazy crooks don't have a brain. So,
yeah, that's right. But now get this. He then admitted he had it there. And then he told them, well, he said, I went online and I Googled how to smuggle drugs across the border. So I did searches on my computer. So now he's incriminating himself even more to, get him either deeper down in there. So, I mean, what idiot would go online and try to figure out how to be a smuggler, by going online? I guess he was looking for some YouTube tutorials. I don't
right.
know.
Well,
on
here's
how
something.
on how to smuggle drugs. So this idiot that went online to find out how to do it met somebody somewhere. They gave him the drug. I mean, it's lucky that they didn't arrest him right there and then when he went and did the drug deal.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Because he could have done it to an undercover detective. And then goes out and speeds. Yep, he is indeed our crazy crook of the week. That was a
Well,
crazy one, right?
well, he didn't even have to get out of the cab, and he left footprints anyway,
Yeah, that's right.
digital
Yeah,
ones.
exactly.
All right, Charlie, tell us about Brian McAlbert's statement that was made.
Well, the Alberts, they actually sat down for a news interview. I think it was him, his wife, and Jen McCade and her husband, and
And
they
Chris.
talked, yeah, Chris, yeah, and they
Yeah.
were talking about what had happened to him, and to me, it was at least a story. It's a matter of whether you believe it or not, but it was at least a story that made a little more sense because I've always asked, and we asked in the podcast, and they asked in the trial if a fellow cop that you work with, and I know that they didn't work right next to each other, and I know that Boston is a very large police department, so there are probably officers on that department that don't know each other.
Right.
By far,
Right.
you have 2 or 3 thousand people.
Very possible.
But the fact is, if I, even me, as a retired officer, if I thought there was a police officer in distress on my front lawn early in the morning, I would be out doing everything I could to help him and doing everything I could to try to be there. But here's the way he told it, and I mean, I don't know that it happened this way, but if it happened that way, it at least gives some understanding to how this could have happened. He said he woke up that morning at 6:30, and his sister Jen was in his bedroom, and he said that was different in itself. And he said, first of all, I thought something may have happened to our kids. Then I thought something may have happened to their kids. And she said, John's was on the lawn, and he's hurt. I think he's dead. And he acted very, very shocked. And then he said, he got up, and when he came downstairs, the police were already in the house talking to him, and
Yep.
John had already gone. So he said, if the guy's already gone, why would I run out there? I mean,
Yeah.
they'd already taken him to they'd already taken him away in the ambulance. He said, what do you want me to do? Get out of my underwear and get some crime tape and put it around the
Fire hydrant.
fire hydrant? I mean, if you believe that, that makes sense. I mean, I don't think you could, and I do know that there's been times in my own house here where next door I know that I had a neighbor that was having some medical problems, and there are times when the fire department showed up and everything, and it's just very close to my house, and I never knew they were there until I got up and found out about it the next day. Because what a lot of people don't realize is that you see emergency vehicles, you say, how in the world could you sleep through that? But in the morning hours and the night hours when they come into a neighborhood, they turn their sirens off.
Right.
They don't wake up the whole neighborhood when they're coming in.
That's right.
So that could have happened. I'm not saying it happened, but that at least gave me something to think about in my mind. If he is innocent, I'm not saying he's innocent or not. Here's the truth of this thing. This thing was so sloppily investigated. I don't know that we'll ever find out what happened.
I don't think so either.
You know,
I wish
so
we
we don't
could.
know who's guilty or who's not. But
Exactly.
but if he wasn't guilty, that's certainly an understandable statement to why he did not rush out there that day and that time. And it did clear some things for me because I just couldn't see that because if nothing else, if he had my thinking was, well, if he had been a part of it or he knew something about what was going on, then he would have wanted to be out there trying to help him to try to show everybody, hey,
Yeah.
I'm the good guy. But
Right.
nonetheless, they did come out with that statement. They did, and they talked about how they have been harassed. And if you remember, we talked about this in the first trial. Turtle Boy,
Yep.
the blogger, really riled up the
Oh
entire
yeah.
a whole bunch of people,
Oh
and
yeah.
they were calling them murderers and
Yep.
everything else as they were going to court.
Yep.
And something else that happened that I certainly don't agree with, they would go to these families and they would actually go to their schools where the kids were while they're watching their kids play sports,
Right.
and
Right.
make a big ruckus about it and that sort of thing. He talked about that, and they talked about a lot of the persecution. One thing that he said that, and I think this was his wife that said this. She said, why would anybody want to be a witness? Because that's at this point, they have the same right that Karen Reed had, innocent instead of until proven guilty.
Exactly.
If she said, why would you ever want to be a witness if they're going to turn the table against you like they have us? Well, is this going to happen in all the trials coming up? Are they going to make every witness that comes on? Are they going to, they're going to get the people all rallied up and that sort of thing? So I think it will be interesting to see what is taken from this trial and brought into other trials.
Right.
I mean, what kind of thing will we see? I mean, will there be will attorneys now try to find somebody like Turtle Boy and try to get a whole team of people
Yep.
to lend support to their client? Will it be tried out there? But I will say, and I think you agree, this case wasn't near as bad as the first case as far as the crowd mentality,
Right.
the mob mentality that took place. I thought the crowd was very very respectful,
They were.
uh, and they were, and there was a lot more mention in the crowd of not going against O'Keefe's family, but being a supportive of O'Keefe's family.
Right.
At
Right.
first they were saying that everybody, that doesn't believe that Karen Reed, or that believes that Karen Reed does this, is a murder. That's not true at all. So I thought that was very very enlightening to see what they had gone through with that.
Well, I have another question for you related
Sure. Yeah.
to Brian Albert's statement. He also stated that he didn't go out there because it was not his jurisdiction.
Yeah.
The Canton police were there, and he's a
Yeah.
Boston police officer. So, can
Yeah.
you explain how that works?
Well, basically, if he had gone out there, if John O'Keefe was still there and he went out there, the Boston Police Department, I mean the Canton Police Department, would say, "This is not your case; it's our case."
Do you
Butt
think that
out.
was the attitude that he took, is why he didn't go out there?
No, I think the reason he didn't go out there was because of the fact that he is already gone. I mean, what could he do going out there? There's nobody there. It's just snow out there, and there is another police department out there doing the investigation. And you do have, I will say, as a police officer, there is a very deep respect for jurisdictions. In this trial, we even saw it too. Remember when they went to look at her car and get her car that day? What did they
Right.
do? They called the jurisdiction of that jurisdiction, and they had that police
Right.
officer go with them. There
Exactly.
there is this very we respect each other's jurisdiction. In fact, it really interesting. We have peacemakernetwork.com, which we is our sponsor, and we love these people. We support these people. But suicide is a terrible problem of a lot of police
It
officers
is.
and their families. I had a guy back when I was on the department that came from another jurisdiction, checked into a motel in our jurisdiction, and was going to kill himself, did kill himself, and called us at our dispatch and asked us to come to the scene because he didn't want his fellow officers to have to deal with the aftermath of that scene.
Wow. Wow.
So there's so I think I don't know. He certainly he would have no authority at all to investigate this case because it was a Canton. First of all, it was Canton, and then it was turned over to the Massachusetts State Police.
Right.
Now the problem we got into that was that the investigator of the Massachusetts State Police officer knew the Alberts
Exactly.
and had a relationship with them,
Collusion.
and there was a bias,
Yep.
there. So
Yep.
he should have never even been on that investigation. He should have stepped away, and someone else should have investigated it.
I agree. I agree. He should have recused himself from the investigation
Yeah.
altogether. So did the Brian's statement clear anything up for you, Charlie?
Well, just basically what I said. I could see where that could have happened that way.
Okay.
Don't know that it did, but I could see that that would be a reason why he didn't go out there that early in the morning, and he wasn't standing there because, keep in mind too, he was. I think everybody there was pretty well plastered, so
Yeah.
he could have slept through a hurricane, maybe who
True.
knows? Yeah,
Well, what about Alan Jackson, the defense
yeah.
lawyer?
He was the star of the, and and he didn't say anything through the trial, but he said a whole lot about it.
He did.
He basically said, that we won this trial in spite of everything we were fighting against,
Yep.
and certainly brought about the fact that he didn't have a lot of respect for the way the prosecution handled the case, nor did he have respect for the way the judge handled the case.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
thought that was a little strange. Usually you don't see that kind of thing happening. Probably more than likely because a lot of the attorneys that are in those situations, they have to appear before the judge again.
Right.
But I'm sure that Alan Jackson says, I don't have to worry about being before this judge again. I'm in California, right?
Right. Right.
So he really let it go, and so he made it very, very clear. And he also had a lot of great things to say about Karen Reed, said she was very helpful with the case. And what I really thought was astonishing, he said, her opportunity to grasp the legal part of this case amazed him, and said she was, quote, the best damn lawyer I've ever seen. So
Yeah.
that's pretty high
That is high.
coming from Alan Jackson. So he had a
Yeah.
lot of praise for that.
That's good. Well, what about Hank Brennan? What's he saying?
Well, when we did the podcast, he hadn't said anything, when
Yep.
we
Yep.
did the podcast, but he did. I
He did.
guess after Jackson took a swipe at him, he decided to get back on his horse too. And
He
and he
did.
came back and basically said, "Hey, I looked at this case. I looked at it all the way from one to the other, and he said it pointed straight to Karen Reed, and I still think it points straight to Karen Reed." And basically, he said that the jury got it wrong, and that's strange too, because usually attorneys will not say anything bad about a jury or anything like that. They'll just all be polite about it. The only guy that really I'd say took the high road in all this thing was Alan Morse. Was the first district attorney, Mike Morrissey.
Uh-huh.
And Mike Morrissey just simply said this: "The jury has spoken."
The jury has spoken. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he
Great
was.
words. Yeah.
He took the highest road of between Jackson and Brennan all together. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. So what's your thoughts now about the case after the jury has spoken?
Well, my thoughts is just like what we said a moment ago.
Well, you
Uh,
predicted everything, so
yeah, well, but the other thing is this is that it's really sad, and it just shows the importance of doing a good job. Whatever you do, do a good job.
right. Unbiased.
Because these guys did not investigate this properly. I really, barring somebody coming and making a confession, I don't think we will ever know what happened to John O'Keefe, and that's sad,
That is
James.
sad.
It's sad. He was a great guy, a police officer, a hero, a wonderful man who took his nephew and niece in and ended his life way too soon. And I think another a lesson for this to folks that are listening, folks, is that alcohol and driving does not mix any time, any place.
Right.
And I'm not saying that she did it or she didn't do it. We don't know. But I will say this that there was too much drinking going on, and too many people were out of control that night.
Yep.
And you got to watch that kind of stuff. You,
You
you
do.
got to watch it. You got to realize that because Karen Reed was convicted of drunk driving, right?
That's right.
She was, yeah, and that's undisputed.
Yep.
We know that.
Oh,
But
you.
she
Mhm.
but she wasn't the only one that should have been convicted of drunk driving that
I
night.
agree there.
Brian Albert got in the car and
Yep.
he drove it, and he had as much to drink as Karen Reed. All these other parties, hit
Hitman
our
Higgins.
Hitman Higgins. He got in a car and drove not only to home, but he drove to the police station later. And
Exactly.
he had been drinking all night. So
Yeah.
I agree that the jury got it right with Karen Reed with OUI, but I don't think that Karen was the only one driving while intoxicated that night.
I agree.
It was a whole bunch of other people, and so the story is this, folks. Don't drink and drive. Don't drink and drive while you're intoxicated. I've just seen too many people killed. I've seen lives destroyed. It's just not the right. Make sure you have designated driver. Call a taxi. Call an Uber, but
Call an
just
Uber.
don't
Call a
don't
Lyft.
don't
Yeah.
get behind the wheel while you're intoxicated because
Yep.
rarely do good things happen when you're driving a vehicle and you're impaired.
This is true. This is
Yeah.
true. Well, thank you, Charlie.
Alrighty.
What's up for the weekend?
Well, I'm still gonna watch this case. Something else liable to happen before the end of the week, right?
I was getting ready
Uh,
to say the same thing.
if not, we're taking. I'm beginning to try to get back into our research bin and look at the Koberger trial.
Yeah.
That's coming up just not very far along the way, and that's going to be a really, really, I think, important trial as well.
I
And
agree.
also, I might, if nothing happens more in this case, we might, just try to get people caught up. There's a couple things have happened while we've been covering this. The Mendendez brothers, things have
Right.
happened there.
Right.
The Lori Vallow, some things have happened there.
Lori Vallow.
And with Koberger, there's some things that's happened pre-trial there. So we might just have a episode next week where we get people all caught up and get ready for the next one down on the pike. One
Sounds
thing,
good.
just like there's always crazy crooks out there, there's always crime out there for
That
us
is
to cover,
true.
right?
That's true. So true. Well, thank you, Charlie.
Yep. Thank you, folks, for joining us. We appreciate you being a part of the program. Be sure and join us next week. Till this time, be safe, be alert. Life you save may be your own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional information and podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Peacemaker Network, and also encourage you to support the first responders, military, and law enforcement personnel by contributing to the Peacemaker Network. That's peacemakernetwork.com. All music and sound effects are courtesy of pixabay.com. That's pixabay.com. You can also support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, tag at Charlie Crimebuster, and then click the subscribe button. By doing so, you'll be notified each time we drop one of our shows. Another more convenient way for you to listen to our podcasts, or for you to say to your smart speaker, play Charlie Crimebuster. If you have comments or suggestions, we would love to hear from you, so please send them to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, or you can call or text us at 407-917-2211. That's 407-917-2211. Thank you for listening, and we hope that you will join us again for another exciting crime episode with Charlie Crimebuster.